you, Ali. So we'll start with our first question with Lucas.
Hi there, good evening. Thanks for your time to the representatives of the Office of the Solicitor General, and to MPP Steve Clark, and of course our Mayor Beckford. We do appreciate your time here tonight, but I feel like we're not being taken seriously as representatives or as citizens of North Grenville. We're just being told that this is happening, and basically you're placating by having these meetings. We're really not getting meaningful discussion out of any of this. But I'd like to just point out that diagram that was shown by Ali there earlier. In that diagram of the site, I could see the building I was born in when my grandmother and my father both passed away. That's the Kemptville Hospital, as well as the house I lived in for 20 plus years growing up, the schools that I attended, elementary and high school, and the college where my mom taught for 30 years, as well as the fields where I learned to grow food. How can you, in all seriousness, tell us that this is a good idea, a good choice of site in a time of food scarcity that's increasing, to be using this invaluable agricultural land to put this kind of a facility on? And I pose that to you, MPP Clark, as well as to anyone representing the Office of the Solicitor General. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Lucas, and I appreciate those comments, and I understand the connectivity. We were able to, drive around in the municipality, see what a strong municipality it is, and obviously family-oriented. For us, obviously, with the site selection, and I did discuss this. Actually, let me take a step back. So I know it seems like, as you said, Lucas, that we're moving through the process. One piece is we never do engagements usually this early in. So in terms of working with us in terms of the evolution of getting certain agreements in place, whether it be the land agreement or the sewage agreement, usually we have these kinds of engagements a lot later on in the project. But obviously, because of the good advocation from Minister Clark and your worship in the municipality, that's why we're here today. So it's we're going along the journey. To the site selection, I spoke about the reasons why we were able to choose that site, because there was no barriers for those other reasons. But I understand the impact, especially on the agricultural piece. So that is why, twofold, with the L portion, which is almost going to be 1 to 2 football fields, we want to promote that to be agricultural. So we want to be able to use that, and to be able to use that to get back to those agricultural roots. And so whether it's the L portion, or secondly, whether if it's the southern portion, which is that red portion, which we are going to work to get it transferred over to the municipality, those are the two spaces where we can truly help to bring back that agricultural importance to that municipality. So we're working with you, not against you, in terms of making sure that happens in terms of agriculture, so you can keep that historical piece. And obviously for the future as well, the future generations, they don't lose that connectivity that site is agricultural. We want it to be, yes, a site where we're doing a social need, which is an institution. We want to make sure that site obviously is that social need, because it does fit all of our site selection. But we also want it to be a site where agricultural can flourish, and the city and the municipality can flourish in terms of being able to use it to link back to that. But thank you, Lucas.
Thank you, Elliot. We'll now go to Chris Wilson, and it'll be followed by Victor Lachance.
Thanks so much, everybody. I appreciate your time. There's a large majority of people in North Grenville that are opposed to this prison project. And the others are only in favor of it because of the economic benefit that it's supposed to bring to the community. So I had a question to Steve Clark and maybe the representatives of the Solicitor General, but I'd like Steve to answer, please. Most of the studies that I've seen, many from the US, but one in particular from Ontario, show that less than 20% of the small towns see any economic benefit, if anything. So what makes Steve Clark think that Kemptville would be different? And what makes us as residents believe Steve?
Sure. If I may start first. So twofold. One is that when Infrastructure Ontario spoke, so Angelo, Senior Vice President from Infrastructure Ontario spoke, he spoke about a current example that we have in terms of building in Kenora and Thunder Bay, and how many, approximately 80% of the subcontractors being local, as well as in Kenora, I think it was around 18%. So in terms of when we're building, there is an economic positive. During the operations, we will have about anywhere from 300 to 400 staff as well that come in to that facility. So in terms of, and we know that obviously as people come to work, they also shop, they go to lunch. So there is that positive spillover. So I know that those studies say that, but we know that when people come to work, they go and get coffee. We know that when people come to work, some of them do go get lunch and some of them do shop. So we know that 100% that we have the stats from Kenora and Thunder Bay, and we know that obviously that when you look at the staff that are coming, they will spend money while it's there. But the economic benefit is just we're coming here for social good in terms of being able to create a facility that is modern, that helps people rehabilitate and get them back on their feet. The economic factor is secondary to that. So the economic factor is not the driver of bringing this. It is the social piece.
Thank you. I'll ask Victor Lachance. And that'll be followed by Patricia.
Yes, thank you for everyone and the opportunity to speak. I want to go back to the first question the person asked. I'm not sure it was answered, so I will ask the question maybe this way. You've spoken about wanting to enhance and protect the agricultural nature of the community. So how does paving over arable land and tearing down existing agricultural buildings enhance our food security and our agricultural heritage and history?
Absolutely, Victor. So I think, I spoke about this. So we're trying to do a double use. So obviously all of the lands are not going to be agricultural because we're using, as you saw in the gray area, that will be the footprint where we are. But surrounding on the L, which is again 1 to 2 football fields in width and goes all the way from the western corridor along the southern corridor, can be used for agricultural or greening. And the southern lands that we want to transfer as well to the municipality, which is the acreage is very large. I don't know it off the top of my head, but it's a large plot of land that we want to be able to transfer so that it can be used as agricultural as well, or greening, or whatever the municipality would like to use it as a positive space. So although the entire piece of land is not going to be able to be used as agricultural, we're trying to accommodate that L portion, which again is a very large portion, as well as that southern portion can be used as agricultural. So we're not going to be holding those lands and not allowing the use of it, where we want the municipality to be able to use that land for greening and for agriculture. So that's the best answer, because we're not saying no to the agricultural use. We're just saying that it has to be a mixed use, that we're going to take our space that we need, but the rest of it we want to use for agricultural and or greening.
Thank you. We'll go to Patricia, and after that, I'll field a couple of questions that came through the chat, and then we'll get back to the live questions with Colleen and Julie. Patricia.
Okay, thank you very much for this evening. My question concerns the police service in Kemptville, the small town of Kemptville. I believe that it would be enhanced, but I did notice somewhere you said they would drive the prisoners to Ottawa. Who's going to pay the extra costs of that? And will it be paid on an ongoing basis? And I believe that you will not be contributing enough taxes to pay for an increase in police services. We are a base of 7,000 taxpayers. We are not Ottawa. We are not 500,000 people. We cannot, if it was in Ottawa, then they would be paying a penny a year extra. We're going to be paying about $60 a year, every year extra on our taxes to cover the police costs. Am I correct in that? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Patricia. Very, very important topic. So I'll try to address it for you. Inmate transfer, as you said, by the police. And sorry if I didn't speak clearly, was that we want to keep that in Ottawa proper. So where OCDC is right now. The people that will be coming to us are sentenced, so they do not need to go to court because they've already been sentenced. And we also want to utilize as much as possible pre-trial the video court. So in terms of the transportation piece, we see that it'll be very minimal impact because that's why we're keeping Ottawa to stay OCDC, which we call, to stay close to the court. So those transfers can happen there. In terms of policing costs, we have been working with a few municipalities. When you look at Quinte, and that's why we use that example of Quinte, we see that, the institution results in about 50 to 100 calls a year, right? In terms of that. And we're working in terms of triaging those calls and bringing those calls down. The difference between Quinte and what we're building here is that we're building a very modern facility. We're building a facility that will majority-wise house sentenced, right? Not a mixture of inmates. A very therapeutic environment. No one is sharing a bedroom. No one is sharing a cell. We call it, but we can call it bedroom. No one is sharing a cell. Two people. They all have their own independent space. They have a day room. They have outdoor space that's therapeutic. And so we won't see the number of calls. So if Quinte is 50 to 100 calls, we believe that this will be well below 50 calls a year. And we're happy to work with the municipality. If that does come to a fruition where we're looking and seeing that there's an increase, we're happy to work with the municipality and have that dialogue to see why did it increase and how we can mitigate that increase. But using Quinte as a template of only 50 to 100 calls a year and the type of facility that is and the type of profile of people that are in that facility versus what we are trying to do here, we're very confident that it'll be below that the lowest mark, which is 50 calls a year.
Thank you. So I would like to just go to a couple of the questions that came in the chat. So the first questions are from Sarah Siliberto and from Lisa Galin. So will you provide a copy of this presentation and a transcript of this session?
Yes, definitely a copy of the presentation.
Okay. And then the next question that came into the chat is, what Indigenous groups did you consult, and were the hereditary Indigenous leaders of the unceded territory in question consulted, and what response did you get?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Daniel, I don't know if I-7, because we're obviously using I-7 as a great partner in terms of those engagements. So I don't know if someone from I-7 can help.
Well, maybe I'll. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
Hi, Daniel from IO here. Yeah, we definitely have already one meeting with the AOFPN very recently. Actually, was the second meeting, and we are in touch with other groups such as the AO, and so it's ongoing. There will be ongoing engagement on a going forward basis with all the groups.
I think two areas that we generally hear from our Indigenous partners is one, making sure that we're building a facility that's culturally appropriate, that has the look and feel that's very important to our Indigenous partners, and has the programming as well. So that's usually one piece that we hear from. The second piece is how they can also be involved in the build as well. And so that's a positive impact for their community as well. So usually those are the two issues that we hear from when we engage with our close Indigenous partners.
Thank you, and we'll do one last question, and after that I'll move to Colleen Linus to start again the 5 questions. So you say the average, this question is from Paulina Grace. You say the average stay would be 40 days with sentenced inmates serving a maximum of 2 years less a day. But what about the inmates that are on remand? they could be any type of offender, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. They can be any type of offender. But the reason why we're building this facility is to, in the vast majority, just house sentenced because of the style and because the ownership of sentenced clients or inmates is with us, the province, and so that's why I quoted the 40 days. I don't know, Daryl, if you have any supplemental.
Yeah, thanks, Ali. I mean, yes, for example, situations like that, like long-term remands will be mostly housed in Ottawa. In those situations, primarily the SENS clientele will be in the Kemptville site, dealing with those programmatic situations and trying to get issues with them, dealing with a much more secure environment in those situations where those individuals serving 30, 40 days can do certain specific programs before returning back to their communities.
Okay, thank you. So we'll go back to live questions. I'll invite Colleen Lenis, followed by Julie Lankin.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, and it's Linus, by the way.
Oh, sorry about that.
No problem. Okay, well, thank you. So I'm going to go back to Ali. A year ago, around this time when you had the engagement session, you spoke very definitively that there would be no tax implications for the people of North Grenville. And I have two words for you: police services. And sadly, what I'm hearing you do tonight is what I unfortunately expected, which is you're diminishing the reality that there will be tax increases for this community for the policing services that are required by this facility. You cannot tell us now, predict in any way, in 7 years, in 10 years, and 15 years from now, what the policing needs will be at that facility. So I wish you would just be candid and just acknowledge we've seen the numbers from Penetang, we've seen the numbers from Greater Napanee. We can go around the province and find all the numbers. We just know, in fact, there will be a tax implication, and it's important that that finally be acknowledged by this ministry, by our MPP, by our mayor, and stop pretending it's not happening. And the other reality that we had to find out only through an access to information request, which, by the way, withheld 90% of the relevant information regarding the site selection, we found out that part of the reason for choosing this site was it allowed you enough land to expand in the future. Now, you'll tell me we don't know if we're going to, we may not. The fact of the matter is that this community has no guarantee that that will not expand over time. And so whatever plans you have for this buffer zone, which does not sound terribly appealing, by the way, and I think Lucas was making the point, why lose any of that precious land? Why pave over any of that precious land? So my question is for Minister Clark. And Minister Clark, you have not answered. Two people have asked you to answer, and you have not answered them. We asked you to come here in person and talk to people. You have not done that either. So my question to you is, I want you to look Lucas in the eye, and I want you to answer his question about how you could possibly have thought that taking that piece of land, paving it over, destroying that heritage farmland, and building a prison was in the best interests of this community. Thank you.
Yeah, Ali, I wasn't expecting to have so many questions tonight, but I want Colleen to know, I know she's very angry at me. And I want to assure everyone tonight, the reason I pushed so hard to have this meeting tonight was I felt there needed to be some answers. I think you heard me at the start of this call. I think there are some legitimate concerns that people need to have answered in the community. And if what you want, Colleen, and if what the group wants is to have a meeting with me in Kemptville then let's just do it. Let's just have the meeting, and you can let SolGen continue with this session tonight, and then I will work with you because I'm at Queen's Park. I communicated both to you and to the other organization that the House is sitting and that I'm here. So rather than belabor the meeting, I will commit to you that we'll have a meeting in the municipality. You can answer the questions. I'll bring some people with me to answer who are the experts. But rather than ask me all the questions when it's SolGen's meeting, as your MPP, we will organize something. And I thank you for bringing it up.
So can we go to this person on the list is Lisette Major.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I want to go back to Sarah Siliberto's question, and Ali said there would be a copy of the presentation available. I want to be clear on what he actually means on that. Is it just the nice, pretty slides that you did this evening, or will it also include the questions and answers that we're listening to right now?
Thanks for that. It definitely includes the slide. I'll look in terms of the Q's and H's as well. And we'll get back to you on that. But I do want to actually talk about something that I believe Colleen brought up in terms of the policing costs. The reason why we showed the Quinte example is actually to be transparent. The Quinte example shows 50 to 100 calls a year out of 365 days. And we know that this facility is very different than Quinte, as I said. We know this is sentence. We know this is a very therapeutic environment where people have their own space. So what we're projecting is that it'll be less than 50 calls. So if you have 10, 20 calls that are coming to this facility out of 365 days, we don't feel that it'll be a major impact on the policing. But if we get to that point, and it is, as we are doing with our partners in Penetang and in Quinte, and in Penetang, it's a 1,200 offender. We'll work with the municipality, but wanted to make sure that we definitely, that's why we use that, and we're transparent about using the Quinte, because we feel that this is a very different facility and that we will be vastly under the bottom, which is 50 calls out of 365 days. In terms of the expansion is always an indicator no matter what we build, whether if it's so any kind of social infrastructure, actually, it's a consideration, whether if it's a hospital, whether it's a police detachment, a courthouse, or corrections. In terms of expansion, there is no actual need for us to expand. And if for some reason in 50 years, 60, 100 years from now, that need is there, we have the space, obviously, in our fenced-in area. And that's why we're very comfortable with that buffer space in terms of being able for the municipality to use it for 20, 30, 50, 100 years, as well as transferring that southern portion as well to the municipality for their use.
So we'll go to Denise, followed by Nadia Gray and Lynn Hibinski. Denise, are you able to unmute?
Sorry, for some reason, I'm not able to unmute Denise. So maybe let's go to the next one and hopefully we can go back to Denise in a moment.
Okay, so we'll go to Nadia Gray.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Nadia.
Thank you for your time, all of you that have spoken. You're excellent bureaucrats. You've done a thorough job as bureaucrats. But this was supposed to be, in my understanding, a discussion of the community. The stakeholders are not John Howard and all the others that you mentioned, really. The stakeholders are the people that buy houses here, that have moved here, that have lived here for a very long time, since '82. And the question I have to Stephen Clark is, all of the people that spoke except you do not have the ability to change this project. They are doing their best to cause it to occur. Our mayor has worked diligently because she considers herself a junior level partner. But this is not about that. This is about our community, about what is to be done in the southern section of it. You're all assuring us of how comfortable all the people will be that will live in the facility. But you have not, it seems, consulted, because the word used by Steve Clark was unalterable when he announced this particular project. And today, it seems that it is unalterable, because some very talented, some very smart, some very articulate people have been working diligently within their job descriptions to do what they were asked to do. But this community has not been asked. This community was told. And surely we can back up from here and take a look at what we want. It may come out that the majority want this. I don't know. But I resent tremendously the undemocratic word unalterable. And the work that you've all done will ensure something happens here. But is it for the good of the land? Is it for the good of the people? That has not been even discussed. So, Mr. Clark, since you now seem to be not wanting unalterable as the solution, and you're going to come and talk to us, how about a real consultation? How about putting a stop to this while it is discussed? Because you are changing this to be the way you've all decided, because it's available and Ontario owns it. But so do we. We are Ontario. We live here. So my question is, can you explain $250 million going to this? You talked about all sorts of other things that will cost money, taxpayer money. I think $250 million to sit on the land here in prisons of 235 people is an enormous waste of money. Perhaps I'm not alone, but I haven't been asked. Thank you for giving me the time tonight. So my question, Mr. Clark, is why did you enter this as unalterable and didn't even bother asking your constituents? And you went to Elections Canada to quiet this community. Those things I find unacceptable and demeaning to this community. And now all these talented people are telling us what we can do for the people that will be incarcerated. But what did you do for us? I'm sorry. I'm very angry. I'm sorry that I've spoken so sharply, but in effect, I'm not. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. Don't apologize. We understand, obviously, right? This is emotional for the citizens of municipality that have been here for a while. So I appreciate your comments. One thing I will say is, as we're moving forward this, we are trying to find the balance of being able to allow the municipality and work with the municipality as a partner to gain a benefit of that lands, because the lands didn't have a dedicated future use and investment. And so we're trying to make sure that we actually help stimulate that investment in terms of the agricultural on the L portion and on the southern portion. And just secondly, as I believe Minister Clark already recognized that certain discussions should be taken, and he's committed that he'll have that discussion with a group of the citizens moving forward.
Yeah, and thanks for that, Ali. And I'm committed to have those conversations. And again, as I said at the start of the process, I want to make sure that that those community concerns are addressed. But at the same time, as someone who has proposed projects in Brockville and in North Grenville, I want to make sure that that we have that opportunity. I think you touched on it, Ali, about having some agricultural opportunities on that site, but also this project moving forward. So I remain committed to this project, but I also remain committed to working with the community on some of the challenges and some of the legitimate concerns that they brought forward.
Thank you. I will now go to Lynn Hibinski, followed by Andrea.
Thank you. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
One of the concerns that I have, and I'm sure I'm not alone, and this pertains to the site selection process. And I have some comments and a question for Angelo Gismondi. At our session a year ago, it was identified there were 100 or perhaps 130 sites that were assessed. In the 10 pages that were released as part of the request for information, there were 38 sites identified in July of 2019. So it seems that there were quite a number of sites that were identified and assessed. And my question is, and in fact, Angelo, you may recall at our session about a year ago, you had a takeaway from a question asked by Kirk Albert regarding the 100 sites. You were going to get back to us to confirm the list of 100 sites. All we've seen to date is 5 or perhaps 6 sites that were assessed. So my specific question is, when will the list of 100 plus sites and their assessment be provided to us? Angelo, could you comment on that?
If I may, while Angelo is coming, in terms of potentially that 100 plus, just as anybody would be potentially looking for a commercial property or a house, you assess obviously a lot of properties and then you shortlist. So I think the 38 in terms of the FOI that you got were the shortlisted ones, but many more were reviewed, and that's how we get to the 100. Just like if you were buying a house, you don't shortlist, the 50, 60 houses that potentially any of us would look at. You might look at 50, 60 houses, but you might shortlist only 5 or 10 to go see. So that's what I believe. But Angelo, I know you're having technical difficulties, so if you're on.
Angelo had to drop Ali, and so he asked me to fill in any question that come up with him. Yes, in fact, I think there was an FOI request with the site selection process, right? And as noted earlier, some of the information I think was redacted in accordance with cabinet records and advice to government and third-party information and economic other interests of Ontario. So that's probably what the full list has not been released.
Okay, thank you. I'll invite Andrea, followed by David. Okay, I think we're having difficulty unmuting Andrea, so we'll go to David and I'll come back to you right after Andrea. Any issues? Okay, I'll try one more. Mary V.
Hold on a second, I got it now.
Okay, there we go, David. Thank you.
Yeah, it wouldn't unmute for me, but now all of a sudden it did. But thanks very much.
Okay.
So first, thank you for holding this information session. I really appreciate it. There hasn't been a lot of opportunity for this, so and you went through a lot of trouble. I believe in democracy, and I think for democracy to function, there has to be engagement. So thank you for the opportunity for me to engage today and for joining that process. In the engagement session, there was a statement made that consultation had taken place with schools, hospitals, daycare as a municipality, and that no major concerns were raised. I must say I find this peculiar, because in North Grenville, opposition against this project is visible. There's lawn signs up, there's been a lot of stories in the press. Formal presentations were made to Council on March 23rd, 2021, June 22nd, 2021, and community members recently protested in front of Steve Clark's office. In the June 22nd, 21 council meeting, there was a statement made by Kristen Strackerjan, who's one of the councillors. And it was a statement she made when she was in conversation with Kirk, who's a member of JOG. And what she stated, and it's reflected on the video coverage of that meeting, says, "We all agree that nobody wants a prison in their backyard. A want for a prison is probably, not realistic, and I don't think we would want it for economic benefits or any other reason." So my question is, how can you state that there are no major concerns when residents are clearly opposed to a prison being built in North Grenville? Will you acknowledge that there is opposition or continue to state there are no major issues?
Yeah, thank you for that. And in terms of the stakeholders, when we met with them, it's that there were no major concerns in terms of things that we couldn't work with them to help mitigate, right? Whether if it's the school boards in terms of safety and security and making sure that we keep them apprised of how we're creating the buffer zone, how we are creating a secure area, what the sight lines will be, whether if it was hospital in terms of being transparent and working with them to see what services we might need from them and how we can help bolster those services actually for the whole community, because correction, the facility could be an anchor to help promote some of those things that can come to bolster the hospital. So that's what I mean in terms of no major concerns, that there was nothing that was insurmountable for us to be able to work with those partners to make sure that we mitigate any concerns that they have or help bolster any positive things that they want to see from this project.
Ali, it's Mayor Nancy Peckford. I did sit in on every stakeholder session. So I do think it is important to highlight that all of the school boards, both English and French, expressed appreciation for the information. I have 3 kids on the campus who go to school in close proximity to this potential future facility. All school boards did not articulate or signal any opposition. In fact, a couple have expressed interest in potentially doing some adult learning and programming. I was on the healthcare sector call. I was on all of the stakeholder calls. And I have to reinforce what Mr. Vishkini has said is absolutely concerns were raised, but no opposition was expressed.
Okay, thank you. So I'll go to Marie V, and then we'll try Andrea again. Go ahead, Marie.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. We're talking about the inmates that would be in this potential jail complex. Some of them will be there for 2 years less a day, and they will be in a facility where there's no access to with public transport. So if their families or friends don't have a car, then they're out of luck. It doesn't matter how beautiful the facility is, they won't have the important support or occasion of visits with their loved ones. How can that be called humane treatment? My the other part of this is when OCDC is undergoing the renovations, I would imagine that you will be hosting more of those inmates in Kempville, and the same thing will happen again. They'll be away from their communities in a place where there's no public transit to get to, and a definite lack of social services and other accommodations needed. How can you call that humane treatment of inmates?
Thank you for that. So just in terms of the OCDC, the Ottawa facility, area that we would like to do the renovations is the area where people will actually vacate. So there'll be no impact. We don't have to displace who will be staying there because it'll actually will renovate the area that's already vacated to upgrade that facility, whether if it's for female or mental health purposes or other purposes. So there will be no displacement of moving people to Kemptville. In terms of the social services, the reason why we're trying to make this facility self-sustainable in terms of, you saw in the healthcare and bringing the healthcare, but beyond healthcare, it's bringing the mental health services right there, having mental health nurses embedded in that facility, having office space for our partners like eFry and other partners so that they're embedded right into that facility so that they can help with those services. So for us, we're trying to bring everything so we're self-sustainable in terms of those four walls. I think, Daryl, if you want to supplement on that in terms of just the public transit piece and getting people back home.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Ali. Look forward. So with respect to the offenders being there for 2 years less a day, I mean, that's the max in provincial custody. And what we've said before during the presentation and previously is our intent would never to house them there for 2 years less a day. This is primarily for sent individuals only, so we wouldn't put those individuals in this institution. With regards to public transit, we have several facilities now that don't have public transit to them. However, we talked about earlier about visits going back and forth. Many times with the video visitations, they can go that back and forth. We've utilized in facilities such as Monteith, Thunder Bay, Toronto areas. So I think we can mitigate that going forward in a humane manner. Make sure those offenders get the treatment they want, see their families without causing that long distance movement, as well as ensuring that the protocols in place and programming are kept with those individuals and keeping those long-term stays out of the Kemptville institution.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, go ahead, Al.
No, thank you. And that's where we also want to utilize video. So if family member, loved ones are having problems getting there because of transit reasons or because they don't have a car, that's where we're using that video and making sure that we increase our technology use and being fully fit up for video visitations.
Okay, so we'll go to a couple of questions in the chat and then I'll come back to some live questions. So from Professor Justin Pichet, Elizabeth Fry Society of Ottawa has come out in opposition to the project. What will you do with imprisoned women if eFry refuses to collaborate with you?
Yeah, thank you for that. I think the first thing is, and our CAO Maria Schneider talked about this, is, you know, when we look at the facility, it's just one part of transformation. The facility is about, once we do have to have the offenders in our custody and to be able to provide them with a much more humane environment, a much more therapeutic environment. But it's really about the front end of the justice sector transformation, where we're trying to actually not incarcerate people, especially people that shouldn't be incarcerated. So we speak and the government has announced utilization of GPS monitoring, meaning that instead of people having to be put in our institutions and having to wait for a bail hearing or for a short-term stay, that they can actually be in the community but on GPS monitoring, as well as looking at other ways to do our court systems where we're looking and finding a better balance in terms of being able to keep people out of incarceration. So doing everything that they can, working with the courts to keep people out and having a different court system to be able to allow that. So I think for us, it's once they're in, we want that therapeutic, but we're actually trying to keep them out. In terms of the female aspect of it, we want to make sure, obviously, in Kemptville, that we have good female spaces that are as well therapeutic. But we also want to make sure, as we're retroing the Ottawa campus that we have, OCDC, that we're helping increase the females that will be in that facility as well. So it's going to be a huge benefit for them. In terms of other service providers that we work with, we have very strong relationships with them. So in terms of them walking away, we have very strong relationships with them. We haven't seen that with our other facilities.
Thank you. So Pauline is asking if we have an idea of the percentage of inmates that will be sentenced versus on remand.
Yeah, thanks for that. I'll ask Daryl to answer, but I know for us, we want the vast majority. The reason why we are building it this way is the vast majority. So vast majority to me is 70, 80, 90% of people staying, being sentenced. That's kind of my definition of vast. Daryl, would you concur?
Yeah, thank you. That's correct. I mean, we at least, the very, probably around 10% The only people in remand going to institution, those have been chosen through the SAFER tool of classifying the appropriate to go to that institution for rehabilitative purposes. They wouldn't be sent there for a long-term remand. It's for the purpose of a classification of their institution, that a treatment program or that environment would better the individual and their reintegration back into custody. So the population remand would be very low, probably around 10%.
Okay, thank you. We'll do one more question, and then after that, I'll go back to live questions, and we'll go to Michael Olotu, and then Albert K. and Victor Lachance. So some studies show that the question comes from fiscal. Some studies show that less than 20% of small towns saw an economic benefit from construction of a correctional facility. And the other saw economic loss. Is Steve Clark in the Solicitor General's office aware of these studies, and what makes him think Kenville would be any different?
Yeah, thanks for that. I think we already answered that question. One, I think the majority of those studies are American, and what the American correctional system is really trying to do is house those inmates for as cost effective as possible. And we're not trying to do that. That's why we're making such a big investment. We've shown you the construction economic benefit in Thunder Bay, in Kenora, as our partners in infrastructure Ontario did. And again, we are building this for the social good, and the economic impact is secondary as a benefit as well.
Okay. Thank you. So we'll go back to live questions. So I'll start with Michael Olutu.
Sorry, Daniel.
Yeah.
I believe our partners from the John Howard Society want to speak again. Julia.
Okay.
Julia, I don't know if you're still there, but there you are.
I am.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Sorry, working from home has its drawbacks. So I'm executive director of John Howard Kingston, and as an agency, we're advocates for alternatives to incarceration first, and believe that responses to crime should come from an increase of community supports. I'm wondering what type of engagement and consultation John Howard will have with this institution, and learning more about how you plan to invest in agencies like ours, because currently the Solicitor General does not fund the John Howard Society of Kingston and District for any support staff for Quinte, Rockville Jail, or St. Lawrence Valley. This is something to do completely unfunded and off the side of our desks.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll ask Daryl to supplement. So I think in one of the slides we talked about creating that dedicated space for our service providers, and we're happy to look at agreements to make sure that those services that we are bringing, that we are funding for those services in this new jail. So definitely we can look at that. Daryl, anything else to add about that?
No, I think you answered a lot, Alan. With the one respect I'm going to talk is that, as I said earlier, when we get closer to the build phase completion, bringing our partner in like John Howard and Eve Fry to go through the building and talk about that, and certainly open those discussions of how we can make those arrangements work more better for both parties.
Yeah, and I think the one thing here is we are doing these engagements very, very early, obviously, and so usually we're doing these engagements probably a year from now, from where we are today. So these engagements that we've been doing, the first one, and then the stakeholders, a few of the stakeholders, and now it's very early in the process. But we're happy to sit down also, Julie, with our MAG partners to talk about how we are trying to work to actually do exactly what you said, is have alternatives to incarceration. So we're happy to have that conversation with you moving forward, and bring our MAG partners there to the table as well.
Thank you. So I'll go to Michael, followed by Albert K, and then Victor Lachance. Michael.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you very much. Listen, for just a full disclaimer, I think I'm in full support of this project. A couple of questions I will have for everyone, though. And why I'm supportive, I'm very sympathetic to the concerns that a lot of people who are having some apprehension about the project itself. So a couple of things I wanted to raise for all of you. On the issue of complement benefit to the community, would you guys, as part of your planning, dedicate a certain degree or certain percentage of your staffing complement to come from North Granville. It's been done in other jurisdictions where you can have a memorandum of agreement with the municipality in terms of staffing. So that way people from the community will have that assurances that they're going to have that, that benefit. The second question I have is more of a comment that I think a number of people have raised the issue of visitation. I think you raised that there were about 38 days potential staying in the facility. You would not underestimate the impact of somebody moving away from their family, even for 2, 3, 4, 5 days. So why we may be presenting as, there will be some concern in terms of visit, and I think we should really pay attention to that and make sure we complement any planning we have around potential visitation. Because video visitation has been proven in a number of jurisdictions as very problematic, particularly when you don't have access to the internet in the prisons. So I think that is one area that I think is very important for you guys to pay attention to. And I equally want to complement what the last speaker spoke about, that the business of incarceration and reintegration of offender is not unique to just put them in jail. We have a number of organizations like John Howard Society, Elizabeth Fry Society, that perform, I call them the heavy lifters. They're the people that really make sure that your reintegration practices are successful. So as you're developing the plan to put this facility in North Granville, I think it's reasonable to look at those type of organizations that are around North Granville community to complement some level of resource support to them, because they are the people who are going to provide the sustainability of reintegration practices that you're going to be doing in those facilities. So those are my comments, which is one, let's make sure that we're looking at potential visitation structure where we're not going to be imposing a lot of stress and pressure on the municipality and their resources, and equally look at the complement of your staffing and dedicate a certain percentage of that complement in a memorandum of agreement with the municipality in terms of making sure they come from North Granville. Those are my comments.
Yeah, thank you for that. So definitely take away that MOU piece. I understand that. In terms of the staffing complement, that we want to do here has to align with the type of facility that we have. So it's going to be a very healthy blend between, yes, having our officers there for the safety and security, but it's going to be very heavily weighted also on having program officers, recreational officers. We're going to have mental health nurses, trauma-informed people. So it's going to be actually a very healthy balance, because if we're building an environment that's supposed to be therapeutic and have the programming space to do it and the outdoor space, then we want to make sure that the right type of staff are there too. So it's not just about supervising them, it's about actually rehabilitating them. So definitely we can continue to talk to you and work on that. And I agree, we have to get our partners involved in terms of North Granville and the surrounding areas, in terms of what services that they can bring to help rehabilitate as well. So we are absolutely open in terms of bringing those partners to help bolster what we're already trying to do in the facility.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to Albert K. and then Victor Lachance.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thank you for taking my question, Stephen. First, I'd like to make 2 points of clarification. Mr. Vashkini, I would ask you to check your facts with Mr. Clark as to whether there was dedicated planning in place for the property where the prison is proposed. Earlier, you said there was none. You could discuss this with him. Secondly, you've referred to Kemptville a number of times this evening as a city. We're anything but a city. I think that's one of the key things that nobody seems to understand so far. We're not Greater Ottawa. We're 4,000 people in a rural community. We're not a city. We invited Solgen to Kemptville to meet with us all face to face for this engagement session because we wanted you to meet the people that may potentially become neighbors to your facility. I was very disappointed to hear this evening that Solgen was in Kemptville very recently based on your earlier comment, but didn't feel it was important enough to accommodate our request. For my question, I want to circle back to the site selection process. Like Len, who spoke earlier, I'd like to know why you, Mr. Veshkini, and Mr. Gismondi told us specifically that 100 to 130 properties were assessed, but actual documentation identified roughly 38. In the 10 pages of documentation that you released of 145, there were several other obvious contradictions as well, like Kemptville having transit that was not only existent, but in fact expanding, which is flatly false. So my question, can you explain why so much discussion about transparency has been conveyed both last November and this November, but we had to file a Freedom of Information request to get accurate numbers regarding the number of properties that were assessed? And why did the Kemptville site not get disqualified as other locations did for not meeting or only partially meeting threshold criteria that you developed? It appears that requirements were bypassed or rules are being bent by selecting Kemptville. And we're not sure if that's because we're a small community that everyone thought wouldn't seek the facts and push back on your proposal. But I would like it if you could please comment on that. Thank you.
Absolutely, for sure. And definitely, I appreciate the comment about municipality. So definitely we'll stick to that. In terms of site selection, there are many factors. Some are more important than others, but the really big deciding factors will always be size, proximity to highway, servicing, being a government site already, and not having a dedicated. So I know that you brought up this fact that there were potential uses, but it was still circulated as a government land to be able to for any actual entity to put up their hands to be able to utilize it, not just us. So anyone could have utilized it for any other purpose, for any other government purpose. So government directive to go there, and truly it being zoned institutional was a big factor, and having no land claims as well was a huge factor. I know you brought up transportation, but those other things trump transportation definitely, because as I said before, those things do not allow us to build them. If it's not zoned, it's a very long process, or if there's land claims.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to Victor, and then after that, Don and Patricia.
Yes, thank you. I assume you can hear me? Yes?
Yes, we can.
So I guess my question is for you, Ali. I don't think the questions are actually being answered, certainly not directly. For example, Lynn's request for the list of sites, you answered by telling us that they were withheld. We already know that. That's why we're asking for the list of sites. Or Chris Wilson's question about the economic benefits. You say you think that they will be there, but he's asking for evidence. So that wasn't responded to. The list of Indigenous groups that were consulted, you say, we'll look into it, but you would think that if you consulted them, you would know the list, and you would have it, and you would have read it to us. My question about paving over arable land, you answered by talking about the land that is not being paved over. I'm not talking about that land, I'm talking about the land that you are paving. So you didn't answer my question. You didn't answer Colleen's request for a simple, straightforward acknowledgement that the cost to North Grenville will not be zero. You did say, they won't be major costs. You finally sort of tried to answer, but you didn't give a straightforward answer. You didn't answer Justin Piche's question about what you're going to do about Elizabeth Fry's opposition to the prison, because you talked about where female prisoners will be located. That wasn't an answer. You didn't answer the question about where the staff will come from, because you answered by telling us that it will be a mix of staff with guards and other professional services. The question was, will you undertake to ensure that if you did build this prison, that you will employ local people? So you didn't answer that question. You also keep repeating that this is very early in the process to be talking to people, but I can't imagine, and I don't know how it's possible that you would say that it's in the public good, that what you're doing is in the public good, without having consulted beforehand. How do you know it's in the public good? You haven't asked us. Instead, you're just saying, oh my God, we're doing a great job by talking to you sooner than we usually do. That just means another projects. You had no clue what the community wanted, and you claimed to know what the public good is. So my question to you, because I see there's a lot of questions still probably remaining, and many that you didn't answer, and there may be more, in a similar manner that Minister Clark committed to, meeting with the people of the residents of Kemptville. Will you commit to answering in real time? And by that, I mean not in a year's time or not in another engagement session, but if people send you emails, will you commit to answering them in real time?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll just make a few points. Absolutely, in terms of getting emails, we want to answer them. We've gotten a few emails from citizens that actually support, as well as not, and we try to answer them. So if there's an issue of not answering, definitely you can escalate and reach out to us. In terms of the cost, so I think we've been very definitive in saying that the cost, whether if it's water, sewage, in terms of the expansion or in terms of the ongoing cost, it'll be borne by us. In terms of policing costs, we use Quinte as an example. Right now, they are between 50 and 100 calls, and depending on our facility, we think it'll be under that. And I said, for some reason, if we feel that it's significant, if 10 calls or 20 calls a year out of 365 days result in an increase in policing costs, we're happy to work with you to truly mitigate that cost. We don't want to transfer that cost, but given that we think it'll be a low amount volume of calls, that's why we think there wouldn't be. In terms of Elizabeth Fry and the facility, there is a reality that we will still have to house offenders. And when we do have to house offenders because the courts deem that we have to house them because they are being given a sentence, then we want to make sure that when we have them, male or female, that they're in a very therapeutic environment. And so I understand Elizabeth Fry and them saying, and Pichet saying that they might walk away, but we have many partners that want to support us because they understand that we are getting the people who the courts deem have to be housed. And so we don't have an ability to say no as an institution. But when they do come here, this is what we're trying to do, is create that modern facility so that they can enjoy their time there as much as possible, be therapeutic, and hopefully reintegrate. The issue of reintegration was also brought in. We've made a huge investment in terms of reintegrating and putting a focus on community reintegration. We are looking at embedding reintegration personnel inside of each institution that we have, so not just in Kemptville, but throughout, so that they can work with the service providers to actually have a fulsome reintegration plan for each and every offender. So that's a huge piece of investment that we're making. We're in the early stages of operationalizing that and launching that, but that's going to be a huge piece in terms of reintegration as well, so that we don't have people coming back.
Okay, thank you. And Ali, you had actually asked I7 to just reiterate who the Indigenous groups that we met for last year. We met with 3 different individual groups. We met with the Algonquins of Ontario. We met with the Algonquins of Pikwakanagan community, and we met with the Iroquois Nation. I can't remember exactly which one it was, but they were the 3 groups that we had engagement session with last year.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I7 is the one that helps us with those engagements, and so that's why it was in the tip of my tongue, because they help us lead those engagements. Just in terms of also staff, I don't think I addressed that question. The last time we were here, I believe we showed a heat map of where people that currently work in OCDC Ottawa, where they reside. And the vast majority actually reside, or 50% of them almost reside, from off the top of my head, south of Ottawa. So they are in that North Grenville catchment or just around the abutting area. So for us, we know that staff live there already. In terms of increasing the staffing and helping recruit, we're happy to do focused recruitments as well in terms of being in North Grenville or the surrounding areas, so that as we're recruiting for this facility, that we're getting local people. So we're happy to take that away and do focused recruitment sessions in the community.
Thank you. So I will go to Dawn Scared and then Patricia.
There. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, my concern goes back to the policing costs and what I envision being a burden on the taxpayer. I do appreciate the fact that the facility we're talking in Kemptville will be a newer facility And due to that, it may reduce some of the calls for service, but that's just speculation. When we actually talk and use Quinte as an example, which I will use Quinte as an example, when you say that all there is in Quinte is 50 to 100 calls per service a year, that is not totally transparent. Not everyone, I think, understands that not all calls for service are billed at the same rate. Because I'm concerned about money, I will speak in dollars. And if the figures that I have are wrong, I would hope that you will correct me. And the figures that I have are actually given to us by the town of Greater Nepean, who bear the cost. And based on their figures, 13% of all the calls for service in 2020 were directly related to policing Quinte. That resulted in a cost to that municipality of $297,000, specifically for policing Quinte. That's a lot of money. Now, I do accept the fact that when you say that you're prepared to sit down with a municipality and try to mitigate their costs, that in fact did happen with the town of Greater Nepean, and what they had based on the new policing model, where they introduced a different class of calls for service called information calls for service, which are non-billable. That allowed them to adjust their bill by $65,000 for 2020. That still left them with a $231,000 bill. So what I would appreciate is, first of all, if my numbers are wrong, please correct me. I think what we need to do when we're talking about concerns about cost, let's speak to dollars. When you talk about 50 to 100 calls for service, that sounds like nothing until you start to realize the different billing rates. It's really more of a comment, other than I think it's important, and I think we need to start using the same metrics. And in the case of when you're talking costs for policing, I think we need to talk in dollars. More of a comment than a question. Again, if my numbers are wrong, please correct me.
Oh no, off the top of my head, I can't say they're wrong or right, but I absolutely take your point in that, obviously 50 to 100 still has a fiscal impact, and we are working to reduce that and mitigate that with all the policing partners. We're also looking at the future with our ministry of how we can continue to mitigate that, and what policies can we bring forward to continue that. We know in Brockville that there isn't a major impact in terms of cost dollar. So we know that every municipality is different depending on the size of facility and depending on the type of facility it is as well. So we know in Brockville there isn't significant. We know in Quinte, as you stated, there is an impact. But with our Kemptville facility, we will work with you. So I think we need to take this and continue to work with you and continue to see what impacts and then see how we can mitigate it. So for sure, this is an important topic that we'll take, and we're hearing it loud and clear that this is something that we need to continue to work with you on.
Yeah, Ali, and the other point is Don talks about the Greater Napanee facility. I think it would be important for us to also look at the Penetangwishing facility, because it has been reported in the local media about that site, and then as well the Brockville site as well. So I think for context, to let people know how many beds are in these facilities, and I think Don's saying to you, if his figures are wrong, correct him. So I think you need to do your due diligence, like I said earlier in my opening comment, that these are valid concerns people are raising, and we need to have some certainty in the community regarding costs.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we hope no costs.
And those concerns were reflected formally, as Mr. Hibinski knows, in the most recent letter to the Solicitor General.
Yeah, by me too.
Yeah, absolutely, Your Worship and Minister Clark. In terms of Brockville, St. Lawrence, we know that we have about 150 beds, give or take, between the jail and the St. Lawrence Valley Treatment Center. And we know Penetang is around 1,200. I think 1,180 beds in terms of Penetang. So very different in terms of scope and scale, but I appreciate your comment, Minister Clark.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to Patricia and then Wendy, Ruth, and Colleen.
Hi, thank you for taking my question. Thank you also for allowing us to look into the costs associated with policing, considering that we didn't really get consulted about whether we wanted the prison in the first place. It's very kind of you to look into that for us. My other concern about policing possibly is the fact that we're talking about making this a smart prison. So there'll be surveillance cameras, there'll be those things, drones that fly around looking after things, making sure the prisoners stay where they should, enjoying themselves in the prison. I wonder if this extra surveillance available at the prison will have any effect on the community in general. I have read articles about people having their cell phone messages read when they shouldn't have had them read. And I just think security from the point of view of the general public, I don't like the idea of this at all. And I wonder what security issues you're going to put in place to make sure that nobody outside of the prison is going to get impacted by this surveillance.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'll ask Daryl to supplement on this as well. Just in terms of, you talked about cameras and CCT. Our cameras and CCT are really for our perimeter only, and they're small. The CCT cameras, they're not the old box CCT cameras. They're HD and they're small. Obviously, they're throughout on the inside and outside. On our fencing, we also do have just motion sensors, so we don't need to put cameras beyond our fence line. Right, that can actually see into the community or even get close to that buffer zone, because we do have motion sensing just in our fence line. And in terms of drone technology, we don't use drone technology, but what we are doing is that we are moving forward with providing technology in all of our facilities that actually help dispel any drones. So if anyone is using drones, in our facility or goes, so that we dispel it, and so there would be no drones used around us. We don't use them, and we don't want drones to be used, to fly over or around our facilities. Daryl, anything else to add?
Yeah, just to add on with respect to looking at people's phones or recording or going into, we have no technology that does that. We don't look into that even in the buildings. That's something we don't look at for technology-wise. Regarding the drone issue, certainly we have drones going around, but Ali pointed out there's technology to detect them coming in, not going out with them outside the facility itself. And the cameras are, again, around in the facility or the very near facility edges, the perimeter, not going outside. They would not be going out looking in the community or outside the building proper of where they need to look for the security of people attending the institution.
Okay, thank you. I'll go to Wendy, Ruth, and then Colleen. Wendy, are you able to unmute?
Hello?
Yes, go ahead and hear you.
Hi, thanks. I actually put in a text message too. I was curious as to whether or not there was any other provincial plans besides North Grenville, cross province, that are developing this type of correctional facility.
Sorry to cut out, Daniel. Did you get that full question?
No, sorry. Can you repeat it again, please?
Are there any provincial plans besides the development in North Grenville, the restructuring of the Brockville facility and the Innis facility in the works?
Yeah, thank you for that. So definitely we're modernizing the Brockville and St. Lawrence. We're looking at how to help as well Quinte. We're building a new facility in Thunder Bay, and we're building 2 new facilities which are rapid construction in Kenora as well. Kenora and Thunder Bay, sorry.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to Ruth, Colton, and then Colleen. Go ahead, Ruth.
Bonsoir.
En tant qu'une réunion du ministère du procureur général et en gardant l'importance de la langue française, la priorité de votre département d'offrir des services en français et particulièrement l'accès aux droits linguistiques des francophones dans notre province, je poursuis avec ma question dans cette réunion dans une des deux langues officielles de notre province. Gardant en tête que vous avez la sécurité et la bienveillance des détenus de notre région en tête, j'aimerais savoir comment vous allez assurer la bienveillance et la sécurité des jeunes enfants de notre région et particulièrement du campus de Campbell. Le fait que vous allez en discuter de ceci dans le futur ne m'indique pas que vous en avez pensé à date. Qu'allez-vous faire?
Okay, so Ali, I'll translate that for you. And Ruth, if I miss something, please feel free to come back in again. I'm just going to ask you to unmute just in case I don't. But so in following the essence of looking at questions in both official languages, she's asking a question relating to how are you going to ensure the security of our children around the facility. So, Ruth, si jamais j'ai pas ciblé la question, sentez-vous à l'aise d'ajouter?
Oui, j'aimerais bien savoir, avec le campus de Campbell à côté de votre facilité, comment est-ce que vous allez assurer la sécurité des enfants d'un jeune âge de 12 mois jusqu'au la fin du secondaire.
Yeah, so it relates to how are you going to ensure the security of our children ranging from 12 months to high school?
Yeah, thank you for that. Last session, I'll ask Daryl to supplement as well. Last session, we talked about that we have several facilities that are also within the catchment of school areas. I think we used 3 examples where they're within a kilometer range. In some of them even closely abutting, and we've had no significant issues in terms of children. And as we said, we are trying to house these people for the 40 plus or minus days, and then we are transporting them back to their communities. It's our responsibility to transport them back to their communities and not to be discharged from our facility and then have to figure out where they would go. So between the security standards and the high security standards that we have with the buffer zones and being able to use the screening as well as being able to move the offenders back into their communities. Those are the things that we do to protect. And in terms of the examples that we used at the last session with in terms of schools, we haven't seen any significant issues with schools being within that catchment. Daryl?
Thanks, Alex. And I agree. I mean, we've had no issues in the several facilities that are abutting to it, particularly in North Bay with the fence goes in people's back properties. And the school is very close to that institution, as well as OCI in Brandon. Also regarding to the individuals in their care in those facilities, they're brought in secure vehicles to a secure compound into a secure door. Even entering the building, they're escorted by correctional officers at all times or police if they're going to court if that does ever happen. So they're not going to be outside the door where they can move around the area. They're not going to be outside the facility milling around by any means. They'll be inside the building and not outside the building, so keep security of the institution and will not be around children in the area or members of the public for that.
Okay, thank you. So mindful of everybody's time, I know that there are a number of hands raised, but we will go for 3 more questions. So I will do Colleen, Aaron, and David. So, and we'll do 4 actually with Sarah. For Mary V, Justin P, Che, Albert, I would ask that you please write your questions in the chat, and we will. All the questions in the chat will be forwarded to the Solicitor General to be answered. So we will do 4 more questions, and that will close off the session tonight. So, Colleen, you're up.
Thank you. Yeah, just a very brief comments. In terms of due diligence that Minister Clark mentioned, it's actually very easy. A number of people in the community have, in fact, already done it. We brought the matter, Kirk Albert and I, to the June council meeting where we had a delegation and specifically raised the issue of concern around policing costs. It was very easy because it was in the news. And I can't read anyone's mind, but I'll be honest, Minister Clark, it seemed to me that you were not terribly interested in hearing our concerns in that matter. So I'm very glad that you're now showing that level of interest. Also, in terms of due diligence, Quinte has a capacity of 228, just slightly less than our facility. Penetang is considered a mega prison with, I think, over 11, the capacity around 1,100, but they have been averaging around 800. So the bottom line is that we now have confirmation, which we appreciate, that there will be costs to the property taxpayers for policing. The only other comments I want to quickly make, Kirk Albert, when he spoke, mentioned that he had requested and he had separately requested both Cap and Jog of Minister Clark and Minister Jones that they opt to have a public meeting in person where they could engage with the people of the community around this very critical issue. Mr. Clark, to his credit, did respond to us and indicated that he was not in town today, or couldn't be because he's in the legislature. However, I just want to be very clear, Mr. Clark, when you mentioned that you would have a meeting with us, we're not asking for a meeting with us. We're not wanting to do the tiny, little conference room with 6 stakeholders so you can tick that off your box. We're asking you to come to this community and speak to the folks that you've heard from tonight, the other folks that have been writing to you, the people who have come to the rallies, the people who have written the letters to the editor, and show them that you respect them as your constituents and as residents of this community. And finally, I'd like to say, your comment, Colleen, I know you're very angry at me. Well, I'm very disappointed that you would use that phrase, because what we've seen before is a tendency by men, often powerful men, to discredit women by referring to them as emotional. So if my passion was misinterpreted as anger, you're wrong. I'm not angry. But rumor has it, Mr. Clark, you may be very angry at me, and that's unfortunate. So thank you.
I look forward, Colleen, to having a meeting in the municipality. I'm not angry at anyone. I want to continue to stand up for the residents of Leeds Grenville. I've got a number of projects both in North Grenville and in Brockville that I think do have a number of positives for the community, and I've taken copious notes, and I will provide answers, and I will continue to advocate to the Ministry of Solicitor General and other ministries to provide the answers in the community, as I said at the council meeting that I attended.
Aaron Doyle.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So I'm a professor of sociology and criminology at Carleton. First, I just want to say, in your opening presentation, it talked about a positive effect on real estate values, and I have a study sitting here on my desk of 200 towns where prisons were built. It's a study by an economics professor, which showed that real estate prices decreased by 2 to 4% in the areas close to the prison. My main question goes to Minister Clark's point about the need for more specifics. So you've got this very expensive 235 bed prison, which we're hearing is very unpopular with people in Kentville. You refer to capacity pressures in the eastern region and regional trends. As a justification for the need for this prison, the province was able to reduce Ontario's prison population by 30% during the pandemic. And the Ontario government has also promised many times to reduce the population of remanded prisoners and has brought in numerous measures to do that. So to provide a more functional bail system and reduce court delays, and that should reduce capacity pressures in the region a lot. Are you expecting that those measures that your government brought in are going to work? This prison is likely to cost more than $250 million just to build, And so given the massive cost, do you have numbers to show the capacity pressures and regional trends you refer to? And can you make those numbers public, as I asked at an engagement session a year ago? And if not, why not?
Thank you for that question. Ali's computer unfortunately has gone down. I will take a lot of those for you. With regards to the trends of the capacity issues, we'll come back to you on that. We'll get back. There has been certain stages at the start of the pandemic. Our population certainly dropped down by a large number from approximately 8,000 to 5,500. But during that time with the court pressures and some of the backlog on, we're up to nearly 7,700 inmates in our custody right now. So we will look at that and get back to you, look at those documents for consideration. We'll respond. With regards to the real estate concerns, duly noted, certainly we appreciate that, and we will look into that as well. Not familiar with the study you have, sir, but we will respond to those, and thank you for that question.
Yeah, Daryl, thanks. I came back on my phone for some reason. My computer overheated. Just in terms of property, we have other facilities where residential development is happening right abutting our property, and other ones where the properties that have been there for a long time. I don't think we've got ever a complaint in terms of property costs. In terms of managing capacity and being able to building this in terms of managing our capacity in the future, everything that we've said before and today, yes, we do want to manage our capacity pressures, understandably, but that's not why we're building this facility, or the main reason why we're building this facility. The main reason is to provide that therapeutic environment, the human environment. If we were trying to manage capacity, we wouldn't be building single cell accommodations. We wouldn't be building day rooms that are as big and are expansive. We wouldn't be building program rooms and outdoor space for them to be able to enjoy. So,
thank you. We'll go to David and then Sarah to hold off questions.
Thank you. It's a lot of questions. More questions that seem to be able to be answered in this session. We still have hands up, and we've gone over already. And there are a lot of important questions, and I do appreciate that you've taken notes and you're looking at addressing it. But to me, it begs the question: is why not put a hold on the project while those questions get answered? Because the whole point of today's session is to have engagement and try to get the community on board with it. And part of that is answering their questions and dealing with their concerns. But as you can see today, there's a lot of concerns, and there's a lot of serious concerns, and we don't have a lot of clear answers. So it's very hard as a community to know what the impact of this project will be on the community, other than simply, a jail popping up in the middle of the town. There's issues of costs, of policing costs, of transportation, real estate values that may get affected. Could we not put this on hold and do a more robust consultation where everybody's questions can get answered in a transparent manner? So we look before we leap. Would you consider putting a moratorium on this project while the consultation took place?
I think in terms of moving forward for us, we've already started our site due diligence, obviously for all the reasons that I said before in terms of the site selection. There's a reason why we're coming to this site, because we can build there in an expedited manner. We've been trying to find this modernized facility for many years now. But in terms of policing costs, I definitely hear that that's an issue. We are going to take that back and be serious about our response with policing costs, because we heard you today, absolutely. And in terms of the other partners that we work with, whether if it's a hospital or school boards or the municipality, we're trying to blend. We're trying to be a partner. We're trying to support them in what they're doing while also supporting us in our agenda as well. So as a partner, we're trying to be 50-50 in terms of that. I appreciate the comments and the sentiments, but we're trying to be that partner and be 50-50 as we are building it there.
And our last question is Sarah Bowie, and I know that there was another Sarah that lifted your hand. Could you please write your question in the chat so that the Solicitor General can answer it? Thank you. So Sarah Bowie.
I appreciate it. So my question is about expansion. Out of the existing Ontario correctional complexes, so the ones that are pre-existing, As of today, how many have expanded their size and capacity beyond what was originally proposed by Soljan? And I guess another kind of addition to that is we know that solid waste in these facilities can be an issue. So do we ever add water and sewer treatment plants to these complexes?
Yeah, two great questions. So the first one I'll ask Daryl to supplement as well. In terms of expansion, the only facilities that I know that we're looking, to help with expansion to Quinte, definitely, but that's it inside the secured fencing area. And the other expansion projects that we've done are probably a long time ago. I don't think in the last decade or even 2 decades we've done major expansion projects. I don't think we've done major expansion projects that ever go outside of our fencing area as well in the last few decades. Because if we're going to expand, we want to expand within our secured fence. We don't want to move. We don't want to move, but that's something we can definitely look in as well. Because I only have 10 years of history. But so Daryl, I don't know if you remember beyond the kind of 10 years.
Yeah, I can add in, Ali. I've got about 35 years, and the only one that is the consideration would be the Quinte, and that's just the expansion is currently being contemplated. But nothing in Brockville, OCDC in the last at least 20 years, and St. Lawrence is where it is right now.
Yeah, and we're doing new projects in Kenora and Thunder Bay, but those are net new assets. They're not necessarily expansion. They're a net new asset to help modernize those facilities as well.
Okay, thank you. So those of you that unfortunately couldn't get to their verbal questions, please ensure that you put them in the chat. And if you can just go to the last page of the presentation before I ask the closing remarks from Ali. Someone raised a question. There is an email. It came in the chat. If you look at the right-hand side of the slide, there is the email where you can get in touch with the Solicitor General. So solgen.correspondence@ontario.ca. So I can't remember who asked the question about the email, but there is the email. So I would like to invite Ali to close off our session, but I want to thank all of you. I know there's a lot of frustration with this project and that, and everybody was very respectful, and I want to thank you. It makes my job as a facilitator much easier, so I want to thank all of you for that, and I'll hand it over to Ali.
Yeah, thank you for that, Danielle, and I appreciate the community being out here, and I appreciate some of the comments that are made. We will definitely take some of the important issues back in terms of policing costs. We'll definitely take some of the important issues back in terms of service providers and working with them to make sure that they're embedded and that they can come and that they're funded. So issues like that we will definitely take back and take very seriously. Also, just in terms of being able to be more definitive about the water sewage, we said it that we're definitely paying for it ourselves, the one-time cost of building, designing, but also the ongoing. So we'll look at really crystallizing that as well, so that the municipality feels comfortable in that commitment as well. So issues like that we will definitely take back as well. But I thank you for your time. I know we went over time, but there were a lot of questions, and I want to make sure that we try to get to as many as possible.
Thanks, everyone. We appreciate it. Thank you, Ali.